The discovery, the impossible encounter. Captain Alina Rodriguez had seen strange things during her 15 years with the Coast Guard, but nothing like the vessel floating dead in the water 150 miles west of San Francisco. Through her binoculars, she studied the craft that had appeared on their radar just 20 minutes ago. It looked like someone had carved a boat from a single piece of crystal, its surface reflecting the September morning sun in ways that hurt to look at directly. "Captain, what do you make of it?" asked Lieutenant Jake Morrison, the youngest officer aboard the cutter Vigilant. His voice carried the kind of excitement that came with encountering something completely new. Alina lowered her binoculars and shook her head. "In all my years, Jake, I've never seen anything like it. No registration numbers, no flag, no radio response. And look at that hull, it's like it's made of liquid metal." Dr. Marcus Chen, the marine biologist they'd picked up from Berkeley for this routine research mission, joined them at the bow. His thick glasses reflected the strange vessel as he squinted at it. "That's not any material I recognize. The way it's catching the light, it's almost like it's alive." Alina grabbed the radio one more time. "Unknown vessel, this is Coast Guard Cutter Vigilant. Please respond and identify yourself." The static that came back was different somehow. Musical, like whale songs, mixed with radio interference. "Prepare the boarding party," Alina ordered. "Full safety gear. I want hazmat suits, oxygen masks, and every sensor we have. Chen, you're with us. Morrison, you stay with the boat and keep us in radio contact." An hour later, Alina found herself approaching the mysterious vessel in their rigid, inflatable boat, with Chen and 2 other officers. Up close, the craft was even more unsettling. The hull seemed to shift and flow like mercury, but remained solid to the touch. Strange symbols appeared and disappeared along its surface, as if the boat itself was trying to communicate. "Captain," whispered Officer Sarah Kim, their electronics specialist, "my equipment is going crazy. I'm reading energy signatures that shouldn't be possible. This thing is putting out more power than a nuclear submarine, but there's no obvious power source." Alina reached out to touch what appeared to be a hatch. The moment her gloved hand made contact, the symbols on the hull began glowing brighter, pulsing in a rhythm that seemed almost like a heartbeat. The hatch dissolved away, not opening, but simply ceasing to exist, revealing an entrance that seemed to lead into far more space than the vessel's exterior dimensions could possibly contain. Inside, the impossible they've climbed aboard, their footsteps echoing strangely in the corridor that stretched ahead of them. The walls were lined with the same flowing metal as the exterior, but here it was clearly alive, rippling gently as they passed. Soft blue light emanated from everywhere and nowhere, providing perfect visibility without any apparent source. "This violates every law of physics I know," Chen muttered, running his hands along the wall. "The interior is at least 3 times larger than the exterior. And this material, it's warm, like skin." Alina led them deeper into the vessel. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that definitely should not have fit inside a boat the size they'd seen from the outside. In the center of the room stood 3 pod-like structures, each about the size of a coffin, made from the same crystalline material as the hull. Inside each pod, Alina could see a human figure lying motionless. "Are they dead?" Kim asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Chen approached the nearest pod and began examining it with his instruments. "No, they're alive. Heart rate, brain activity, breathing all normal. But these pods, they're maintaining perfect environmental conditions. Temperature, humidity, oxygen levels. It's like the most advanced life support system I've ever seen." Alina studied the figures in the pods. They looked human, but something was different. Their bone structure seemed slightly more refined, their skin had an almost luminescent quality, and their hair had colors that didn't quite exist in nature, subtle blues and silvers that shifted in the light. "Captain," Kim called from across the chamber, "you need to see this." Alina turned to find Kim standing in front of what could only be described as a control panel, though unlike any she'd ever seen. Instead of buttons and switches, there were floating holographic symbols that responded to touch. As Kim moved her hands through the display, images began appearing in the air above them. The images showed Earth, but not as Alina knew it. This was an Earth with cities that floated among the clouds, oceans that sparkled with structures beneath the waves, and forests that seemed to glow with their own inner light. The technology was beautiful and organic at the same time, as if humanity had learned to work with nature instead of against it. "When do you think these images are from?" Alina asked Chen. Before Chen could answer, a soft sound came from behind them. They turned to see the nearest pod opening with a quiet hiss. The figure inside sat up slowly, blinking in the light. It was a woman who appeared to be in her 30s, with silver hair and eyes the color of deep ocean water. "The awakening, where are we?" the woman asked, and Alina was surprised to hear perfect English, though with an accent she couldn't place. "You're aboard a United States Coast Guard vessel," Alina replied carefully. "I'm Captain Rodriguez. Who are you?" The woman looked around the chamber, taking in Alina and her team with eyes that seemed far older than her apparent age. "I am Commander Arya Blackwood," she said, then paused. "Though I suppose that rank means nothing to you yet." "Yet," Alina repeated. Arya stood up from the pod, moving with fluid grace. "Captain Rodriguez, what year is this?" 2025, Alina answered, wondering why anyone would need to ask such a question. Arya's face showed relief mixed with sadness. "Then we made it back far enough. My companions and I were from your year 2157. We're refugees, Captain, fleeing from the collapse of our timeline." Chen stepped forward, his scientific skepticism warring with what he was seeing. "That's impossible. Time travel doesn't exist." Arya smiled sadly. "In your time, perhaps not. But we've learned much in the last 132 years. She gestured, and the holographic display shifted, showing what looked like a map of time itself, with branching lines that split and merged like a river delta. Some of the lines were black, as if they'd been burned away. Our timeline began collapsing. 3 years ago, Arya continued. Fractures in space-time, caused by experiments we never should have attempted. We've been sending teams back through time, trying to find anchor points where we can stabilize reality before it tears itself apart. The other 2 pods were opening now. A tall man with dark skin and eyes like starlight emerged from the second pod, followed by a younger woman whose hair seemed to shift between brown and gold. "This is Dr. Zan Torres, our temporal physicist," Arya said, indicating the man, "and Lieutenant Nova Chen, our systems specialist." Alina noticed Chen's sharp intake of breath at the second name. "Chen. Are you related to Dr. Marcus Chen here?" Nova looked at Marcus with eyes that held recognition and sadness. "Great-great-grandfather," she said softly. "Though in our timeline, your work with quantum marine biology becomes the foundation for temporal science." The warning Marcus stared at his alleged descendant, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. "This is insane. People can't travel through time." Dr. Torres stepped forward. With respect, Dr. Chen, in your time, people believed heavier than our flight was impossible. Every age has its limitations. He gestured to the holographic display, which now showed Earth as they knew it in 2025. Then fast-forwarded through time. Alina watched in fascination as the images showed humanity's progress over the next century. Cities growing taller and cleaner, oceans being healed, space colonies appearing around other planets. It was a future of hope and wonder. Then the images changed. The beautiful cities began flickering, as if they couldn't decide whether to exist or not. The oceans turned dark, and the space colonies simply vanished. Finally, Earth itself began to fade in and out of existence like a television with bad reception. This is what's happening to our time, Arya explained. Reality is becoming unstable. Our scientists tried to create a quantum computer powerful enough to solve climate change. Disease, poverty, all of humanity's great challenges at once. But the experiment tore holes in the fabric of space-time itself. And you think you can stop this by coming back to our time? Alina asked. We have to, Nova said. The experiment that starts the cascade failure happens in your year 2026. We have less than 2 years to prevent it, or every timeline, every possible version of Earth will collapse into nothing. Torres manipulated the holographic display, showing a complex diagram of interconnected timelines. We've been establishing what we call temporal anchors, points in the past where we can reinforce reality. This vessel is one of them. There are others appearing around your world as we speak. Alina felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. What do you need from us? Your help, Arya said simply. In our timeline, the Coast Guard played a crucial role in the early warning system that might have prevented the disaster if we'd acted sooner. Your organization's dedication to protecting life and property, your presence on the oceans, your reputation for integrity, these are exactly what we need. Kim, who had been monitoring the radio, suddenly looked up with alarm. Captain, we're getting reports from stations around the world. Similar vessels have appeared off the coasts of Japan, Norway, Brazil, and South Africa. All governments are mobilizing their navies. Arya nodded grimly. The operation has begun. Time moves differently when you're traveling through it. What feels like minutes to us might be days or weeks in your timeline. We had to synchronize our arrivals carefully. The choice Alina looked around at her team, seeing the same mixture of fear and wonder she felt reflected in their faces. Assuming I believe you, and I'm not sure I have a choice given what I'm seeing, what exactly are you asking us to do? Help us make contact with your world's leaders, Arya replied. We have technology that could solve many of your current problems: clean energy, disease, cures, sustainable food production. But more importantly, we have the knowledge to prevent the quantum experiment that destroys everything. Marcus stepped closer to Nova. If you're really my descendant, prove it. Tell me something only my family would know. Nova smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like Marcus's daughter. Grandfather Marcus, you named your first boat after your grandmother's cat. Mr. Whiskers, you've never told anyone because you think it sounds unprofessional, but you still have the nameplate. In your workshop at home. Marcus's face went white. How could you possibly know that? Because family stories survive, even across centuries. Nova said gently, because you matter, grandfather. Your work, your curiosity about marine life, it's what eventually leads to understanding how quantum fields work in water. Your research becomes the foundation for time travel itself. Torres activated another display, showing a timeline with key decision points marked in red. Captain Rodriguez, in our history, your first contact with time travelers was recorded as the pivotal moment when humanity chose cooperation over fear. Your decision right now determines whether our mission succeeds. Alina looked at the three people from the future, then at her own team. Kim was still receiving radio reports from around the world, her face showing the growing panic of governments trying to understand what was happening. Chen was staring at Nova with the expression of a man whose worldview had just been completely overturned. If we help you, Elena said slowly, what happens to our timeline? Do we cease to exist when you fix yours? No, Arya assured her. That's not how time works. Every timeline that has ever existed continues to exist. What we're trying to prevent is the collapse that destroys all of them. Think of reality as a great tree. We're trying to prevent the roots from being cut, which would kill every branch and leaf. Alina made her decision. All right. We'll help you make contact with our government. But I want full transparency. No secrets, no hidden agendas. If we're going to prevent the end of reality itself, we do it together. Arya smiled, and for the first time since they'd awakened, she looked hopeful. Thank you, Captain. You've just given every version of humanity a chance to survive. As Alina activated her radio to contact headquarters, she wondered if she was making the right choice. But looking at the holographic displays showing the collapse of entire timelines, she realized there really was no choice at all. The future had come calling, and humanity's greatest test was about to begin. The vessel's walls pulsed with gentle light, as if responding to their agreement. Outside, the impossible boat began moving through the water without any visible means of propulsion, heading toward San Francisco and a confrontation with the present that would determine the fate of all possible futures. The truth unveiled. The global response for the journey to San Francisco Bay took only 2 hours, though the vessel moved without creating any wake or making any sound. Alina watched through the impossible windows as they approached the Golden Gate Bridge, seeing military ships surrounding them from all directions. The radio chatter was constant now, with reports coming in from around the world about similar encounters. Captain Kim reported from her position at the communications console. I'm monitoring military frequencies from 6 countries. The Japanese Self-Defense Force has surrounded a crystalline vessel off Tokyo. The Royal Navy has 3 ships approaching another one near Cornwall. Everyone's mobilizing, but nobody's shooting yet. Commander Arya Blackwood stood beside Alina, watching the military response with calm eyes. This was expected. In every timeline we've studied, the initial reaction is always fear followed by curiosity. Your species' greatest strength is your ability to adapt. Dr. Torres was working with what he called a temporal stabilizer, a device that looked like a combination of crystal formations and flowing metal. Captain, we're receiving communication from our other vessels. The synchronization is working perfectly. All anchor points are activating simultaneously across your timeline. Alina turned to him. How many vessels are there, exactly? 12 primary anchors, Torres replied, positioned at key convergence points around your planet. Each one is broadcasting a stabilization field that will reinforce the quantum foundation of your reality. And if your plan doesn't work? Alina asked. Nova Chen looked up from her monitoring station. Then, in approximately 18 months, your timeline begins experiencing what we call reality storms. Space and time start becoming unstable. Buildings phase in and out of existence. People find themselves temporarily in other timelines. Eventually, everything just stops existing. Marcus Chen had been quietly absorbing everything he'd heard. Nova, in our timeline, what exactly is this quantum experiment that causes the collapse? The Genesis computer, Nova replied sadly. A quantum processor designed to solve complex global problems by accessing infinite parallel calculations. The project begins at Berkeley in 2026, led by Dr. Amanda Foster. Marcus's face went pale. Amanda Foster is my research partner. We're supposed to start working on advanced quantum modeling next year. Arya nodded. In our timeline, your initial research with Dr. Foster leads to breakthroughs in quantum marine biology. Foster becomes obsessed with scaling up the technology. She convinces the government that a massive quantum computer could solve climate change by calculating every possible solution simultaneously. The quantum trap Torres manipulated the holographic display, showing a complex diagram of quantum states. The Genesis computer works exactly as designed. It accesses infinite parallel calculations by briefly connecting to alternate realities. But each connection tears tiny holes in the fabric of space-time. Elena watched as the display showed reality as a vast web, with the quantum computer punching hole after hole until the entire structure began collapsing. How long did it take for the collapse to become irreversible? 18 months, Torres said grimly. At first, the effects were subtle. Electronic devices would occasionally display information from other timelines. GPS systems would show cities that didn't exist. Weather patterns became chaotic as atmospheric data from multiple realities conflicted. Nova continued the explanation. Then the reality storms began. Entire buildings would flicker between existing and not existing. People would temporarily swap places with alternate versions of themselves. Some never came back. Marcus was taking notes frantically. But there has to be a way to build quantum computers safely. You obviously have advanced technology in your time. We do, Arya confirmed, but it took us centuries to develop safe methods, and only after we learned from the mistakes that destroyed our timeline. The key is limiting the connections to parallel realities, something Foster never considered in her rush to solve everything at once. Elena's radio crackled with an urgent message from Coast Guard headquarters. Captain Rodriguez, this is Admiral Patterson. You're ordered to bring that vessel to Pier 39 for immediate inspection by a joint task force. Military and scientific personnel are standing by. Copy that, Admiral Elena replied. She looked at Arya. Are you ready to meet our leadership? Arya smiled. We've been preparing for this moment for 3 years. But Captain, there's something else you need to know. The 12 vessels that appeared today, they're not the first. The Hidden Truth Torres activated a new display showing a timeline stretching back several years. We've been making smaller interventions for some time now. A fishing boat rescued off Alaska in 2023, with technology nobody could explain. A yacht found drifting near the Azores with advanced navigation equipment. These were our reconnaissance missions, studying your timeline to find the optimal intervention point. Kim looked up from her monitoring station with excitement. That explains the reports of ghost ships that have been circulating on maritime forums. Vessels with technology that shouldn't exist, appearing and disappearing mysteriously. Each reconnaissance mission gave us more data about your timeline, Nova explained. We needed to understand the exact sequence of events that led to the Genesis computer project. More importantly, we needed to identify the people who could help us prevent it. Alina felt a chill run down her spine. You've been watching us specifically. Arya nodded. Captain Alina Rodriguez, Dr. Marcus Chen, Lieutenant Jake Morrison, Officer Sarah Kim. In our timeline's historical records, you four become known as the Temporal Contact Team. Your initial response to first contact with time travelers becomes the model for how humanity handles the crisis. Marcus stared at his great-great-granddaughter. You're saying our actions today are already part of your history. Time isn't linear in the way you think, Torres explained. Your choices today influence our past, just as our presence here influences your future. It's a loop that stabilizes itself when we make the right decisions. The vessel was approaching Pier 39 now, surrounded by military boats, but encountering no hostility. Alina could see crowds gathering on the shore, news helicopters circling overhead, and what appeared to be a massive scientific encampment being set up on the pier. Nova, Marcus said suddenly, if you're really from my family's future, then you know whether we succeed or fail. Nova looked at him with eyes full of both hope and uncertainty. Grandfather, that's the beautiful and terrifying thing about time travel. The moment we arrived in your timeline, our history became just one possibility among many. We remember succeeding, but that doesn't guarantee we will succeed again. Every choice creates new branches in the timeline tree. The global networkers. They docked at Pier 39. Torres's equipment began receiving signals from the other temporal anchors around the world. Excellent, he said. All 12 vessels have made successful contact. The Japanese team is working with marine biologists in Tokyo. The British vessel has established communication with quantum physicists at Cambridge. Each team is sharing specific knowledge needed in their region. Alina watched through the windows as scientists and military personnel surrounded the vessel. What kind of knowledge are you sharing? Practical solutions to current problems, Arya explained. Clean energy technology that can be implemented with your current manufacturing capabilities. Medical treatments that can save millions of lives. Agricultural techniques that can feed your growing population without damaging the environment. But most importantly, Nova added, we're sharing the exact calculations that prove why the Genesis computer approach is fatally flawed. With that mathematical proof, we can convince Dr. Foster and others to pursue safer alternatives. Dr. Torres looked up from his instruments with satisfaction. The temporal stabilization field is now active globally. Your timeline's quantum foundation is being reinforced as we speak. Even if we fail to prevent the Genesis computer entirely, the cascade failure should be contained. Alina felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. So we've already succeeded. We've succeeded in buying time, Arya corrected. Now comes the harder task of convincing your world's leaders to act on information from the future. There will be skeptics, politicians who see opportunity rather than danger, corporations that view our technology as something to be weaponized rather than shared freely. Marcus was studying the timeline displays with growing understanding. But you have an advantage. You know who will listen and who won't. You know which arguments will work with which people. Nova smiled proudly at her ancestor. Exactly, grandfather. And that's where your family's reputation for integrity becomes crucial. In our timeline, it's your recommendation that convinces the Barclay administration to redirect Dr. Foster's research into safer channels. The choice ahead, Lena, prepared to disembark and face the waiting crowd of officials and reporters. Before we go out there, I need to know what happens next. Do you stay here, or do you return to your own time? We can't return, Torres said. Quietly, the journey through time is one way. These 12 teams, We're the last refugees from our timeline. If we succeed in preventing the collapse, our original timeline will continue to exist, but we'll never be able to visit it again. Arya looked out at the Golden Gate Bridge, her expression mixing sadness with hope. We've sacrificed our own lives to save all possible futures, but it's a sacrifice we made gladly. This timeline, your timeline, it has the potential to become something even more beautiful than the world we lost. Kim received another urgent communication. Captain, Admiral Patterson wants a preliminary report before the Joint Task Force meeting. What do I tell him? Alina looked around at the team from the future, then at her own crew. Tell him we've made first contact with human time travelers from the year 2157. Tell him they're here to prevent a catastrophic collapse of reality itself. And tell him that the Coast Guard recommends full cooperation with their mission. Marcus gathered his scientific notes and data recordings. Alina, when I present this to my colleagues at Berkeley, they're going to think I've lost my mind. Nova handed him a small crystalline device. Show them this, grandfather. It's a quantum resonator calibrated to your timeline's specific frequency. Any physicist will be able to verify that it operates on principles that shouldn't be possible with current technology. And if that doesn't convince them, Torres added with a smile, tell them that the temporal stabilization field they can now detect around the planet is proof that someone has mastered space-time manipulation. The new beginning as they prepared to meet with world leaders and scientists. Alina realized that this moment would be remembered as the turning point in human history. Not the moment humanity discovered it wasn't alone in the universe, but the moment it discovered it wasn't alone in time. One last question, Alina said to Arya. In your timeline, what happens to the four of us after today? Arya's smile was enigmatic. Captain Rodriguez, you become the first Director of Temporal Affairs for the United Nations. Dr. Chen revolutionizes quantum science while maintaining strict safety protocols. Lieutenant Morrison becomes the youngest admiral in Coast Guard history. Officer Kim develops the communication systems that allow real-time coordination between different timelines. Jake Morrison, who had been listening via radio from the main vessel, laughed. Admiral Morrison, I like the sound of that. Alina shook hands with each of the time travelers. Thank you for trusting us with this knowledge, for choosing cooperation over conquest. Thank you for proving that trust was justified, Arya replied. In every timeline we studied, humanity's first response to the impossible determines whether your species survives or destroys itself. Today, you chose survival. As they walked toward the pier to face the waiting officials, Alina felt the weight of history settling around them. Behind them, the crystalline vessel pulsed with gentle light, its temporal stabilization field invisibly protecting the quantum foundation of reality. Around the world, 11 other teams were beginning similar conversations with world leaders, each carrying pieces of the knowledge needed to save all possible futures. The greatest adventure in human history was just beginning, and Alina Rodriguez knew that nothing would ever be the same. But looking at the hope in Nova Chen's eyes as she prepared to meet her great-great-grandfather's colleagues, Alina realized that different didn't necessarily mean worse. Sometimes it meant the chance to become everything humanity was capable of becoming. The future had arrived, bringing with it both the warning of what could go wrong and the knowledge of how to make everything right. Now it was up to the present to choose wisely, knowing that the fate of every timeline hung in the balance. As Alina stepped onto the pier to begin humanity's first official diplomatic contact with time travelers, she smiled. After all, the Coast Guard's motto was Semper Paratus, always ready. Today, she finally understood what they had been preparing for all along.